Hi, this is Steve with MMA Krav Maga. I'm here with my fellow instructor, Alan. We had been looking at some videos online as to why people would study Krav Maga and then may decide to leave Krav Maga. And we were looking at these videos, with genuine interest. We weren't there to see if somebody was bashing our system or anything like that. And it's important to understand right off the bat that we're not looking to defend the system. We're not looking to perpetuate some sort of dogma surrounding the system. And we actually were listening, with open ears and open hearts to see if there was something there that needed to be addressed. And one video that caught our eyes in particular, and in the description we'll leave the link below so you can see what that video was. Someone who had done Krav Maga was talking to someone else about why they felt that their experience was less than positive. One of the things that he talked about was fighting has to be results driven. All right, if you are studying to learn how to fight, you have to win a fight. So one of the things about MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that when you're training, the expectation is you may end up in competition. And if you're going to be in competition, the idea is to win. So if what you're looking for is an experience where you want to train something just to stay in shape, just for the experience of it, then I guess that doesn't really matter. But then ultimately you could go do Tai Chi. You could go do whatever it is that you think keeps you fit because you have no expectation of being in a real fight. But in Krav Maga, you should understand that the point is to survive a real encounter. So if you're going to train Krav Maga, be ready to ask yourself and ask your instructor these hard questions. See, I think it starts with the student as well. You have to ask yourself what it is that you want from that class. If you're walking into a Krav Maga studio and you look at a technique and you go, well, I don't know if that's really going to help me in the street, then you should probably say something. Because if you feel that you're being fed dogma, if you feel you're being fed this story where, well, my instructor taught it to me that way and his instructor taught it to him that way and this is just the way we do things, well, that's not a good enough answer. It has to really stand up to scrutiny. It has to be something that is either going to save your life or it won't.
Well, I think one of the main things people bring up, or at least brought up in that video, is training methodologies. You see a lot of people, at least in the videos they put up, where the training partner is not resisting at all, just completely compliant, and doesn't give you really a sense of whether that technique's going to work or not at all or not. And if you're not pressure testing your training, you really don't even know if it's going to work.
Right. And so you've seen these videos, I'm sure everybody's seen them, where you have a guy stand in a fighting stance, the guy gives him the go-ahead out with a ki or whatever signal, and the guy lunges forward with a punch and then just stays there while his partner's doing all sorts of death touching and techniques, and the guy's just standing there taking a beating. Obviously, that's not going to work in the real world. Obviously it's not going to work in the real world. Now that, of course, is an exaggerated example. That type of thing still happens in the martial arts. But even in schools that call themselves Krav Maga schools, you're still seeing some of this. And the truth is, whatever you're doing with your students, you have to put it under pressure. You have to put it in a pressure cooker. You have to do it with multiple aggressors. You have to do it with striking, with contact. You have to do it with resistance, someone giving you aggression to make sure it works. And you have to measure those results. If you're teaching a certain knife defense and your students are getting stabbed, 9 times out of 10, then it doesn't work. You have to abandon that. It simply doesn't work. And it's not that the system is wrong. It's just that maybe that technique just won't hold up to reality. Do you recall a video, that part of the video where they say that it also has a lot to do with the quality of the school? I don't know if you saw that part in the video where they talk about, the guy...
Quality of instruction.
Yeah.
And quality controls.
Right.
Well, yeah, you have certain organizations you can get certified to teach pretty quickly, and how much do you really know at that point? Does 2 years qualify you to be an instructor to other people? And that seems iffy. I mean, it's you get it. It puts you into the same realm as the Taekwondo schools that promise you a black belt in 3 years. You know, and it puts you really at odds with people in more competition or combat based styles like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. No reputable school is going to promise you a black belt like ever. You know, they pride themselves in how hard it is to earn one of those and how long it takes to get one. And it's not a set time period. If you know it, you don't get a belt if you don't know it. Doesn't matter how long you've been there.
Right. And that's what makes the rank mean something. So something else I wanted to get into, and again, some people who do Krav Maga are going to look at us and, you know, we're traitors to our style, but this has to be said. And we're not saying any of this to call anybody out. We're not looking to, get into some sort of, social media war with any other school. We're saying it because it should be a call to arms. It should be a call to consciousness for all people who say they train Krav Maga. All right, and we're not picking on any one particular school, but these things have to be said. If you're a Krav Maga instructor or you're a Krav Maga practitioner, and you say, well, the reason that we don't enter MMA matches or the reason we don't enter the octagon is because our stuff is just far too dangerous. Our stuff is too dangerous. We would be immediately disqualified and, you know, we'd probably end up killing somebody in the octagon. I'm sure you've heard that as well.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's things that you do in self-defense and anybody would do in self-defense, which would be a foul, you know, would get you disqualified. But when you start saying you're too dangerous, you sound like the guys who sold their styles in the back of comic books, you know? You sound like Count Dante and Ishida Kim and all these fake death touch masters. When you say you're too dangerous, when a professional fighter hears you saying you're too dangerous to be in the ring, they're just gonna laugh at you because it's just wrong.
And just bear in mind that anybody who does a style that's used in MMA can be disqualified for whatever. I mean, midnight to six elbows or slamming somebody in a jiu-jitsu match. These are all ways to get disqualified. Now, they might use those techniques in the street. Just because someone does competitive jiu-jitsu doesn't mean they're not dangerous in the street. That's a ridiculous assumption, and I don't think you would say that to their face either. That's where, just what kind of practitioner are you? That's where that comes into it too. There are people who are fantastic at Kyokushin and then Muay Thai, and they are brutal in the octagon or in the ring, and they're brutal on the street as well. They're fighters for a reason. They're very, very good at what they do. So it's not so much the style there. What's your goal? What's your objective? All right. What is it you want to get from your Krav Maga experience? All right. That's also very, very important. So the way we look at it is, if you go to a Krav Maga school and they tell you, well, grappling is more of a jiu-jitsu thing or more of a judo thing. We teach anti-grappling. That's already a major red flag. Major red flag. Why not grapple? It's out there. There are people who do nothing but train how to put people in arm bars and put people to sleep. You should definitely know what's out there.
Yeah. If you're telling people, well, we train you not to get taken down. You know who's really good at not getting taken down? Wrestlers. People who train grappling, they're really good at not getting someone on top of them. Those are the people who know how to do it.
So take from that. Learn from that. I don't understand why MMA understands this lesson and modern Krav Maga doesn't. It should. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is that we're trying to see where the gaps in the game are and draw from the best of it. If MMA started off with limited kicking, that's why you have Muay Thai, and that's why you have people who run some karate kicks, or if you see some of those elbows being thrown, some of those boxing stances, people have boxing coaches in their corner. People have kickboxing coach in their corner. A lot of people now are adding a wrestling coach along with their Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach to their corner because it makes sense to do that. Those systems are very valid. They have a lot to offer. Why not do that? Just because your uniform says Krav Maga doesn't mean you should be extremely well versed in wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Those are great systems, and that stuff is really out there. Whether you're fighting someone who has experience in that or someone who's just bigger and heavier and they instinctively take you to the ground. You should know. You should know what to do down there. Now, that being said, if you're doing it in the context of purely self-defense, anybody who does just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or just wrestling would say, well, I'll do that in a competition, but if I was on the street and I could get away with it, I'd probably do this. Every style has a dirty version of itself. All right? Every boxers have dirty boxing. There are things that they could do in the street that they wouldn't do in a ring. All right? So ask them, what is it that you would do in the street? And if that's something that would work, then adopt it into your Krav Maga system. Absolutely do that. So the purists will say, well, it's not Krav Maga, it's the way it was taught by Emi, the founder, or it's not the way I was taught Krav Maga. That's not the point of what Krav Maga was or is. It's not to look exactly like those black and white videos of Emi doing Krav Maga in the early days in Israel. That's not the point of it. The style has to evolve and adapt from what really works and hold itself accountable so that each generation, not even each generation, every day your system is becoming more street ready and it answers those very serious questions and it can be held to scrutiny. And a lot of that you'll see if you're watching videos of people sparring. Now, you were talking to me a little bit about what these sparring videos look like and what they should be looking like.
So I think you see the same thing in a lot of sparring videos that you see in a lot of traditional martial arts, where their style looks one way, and then when they put gloves on, they're kickboxing. And there's a disconnect there. I mean, I think what sparring should look like, from our perspective, it should look like dirty MMA. It should look like MMA, but with a different rule set, because we don't look the way this style started. It was supposed to be take from other things and be practical. Boxing works. We know boxers know how to punch. We know knockboys know how to kick and knee and elbow. And wrestlers know how to take you down, and jiu-jitsu guys know how to tie you in knots. There's no reason to throw all that stuff out. We're not trying to be a pure system. The things that work, and that's why people do them. And that's why if you see a traditional style and they look like they're boxing, it's because they put the gloves on, and when they really start trying to hit each other, they end up doing the things that seem to work anyway.
Yeah.
But what should happen? I think what people are surprised by, they see all these demonstrations where there's all these fancy techniques going on, and they're not seeing any of them in the sparring, and that is a problem. If the stuff you're spending 90% out of your time on never comes up when you're training with someone who's resisting, then it's a problem. Maybe those things don't work that well. Maybe you're not spending your time the way you should.
Right. And then again, this is not knocking a particular style. We're just saying that you have to have a priority. So for example, I'm not a professional MMA fighter. I'm not going to an MMA stable and training 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's not my job. I don't live off of fight purses. If that's what I expected to do, that's how I'd spend my time looking to do that because I need to win. All right. If the average person is going to step into an octagon and say, well, I did, a couple of years of Krav Maga, I should be okay. That's a silly expectation to have. It's not that one style is superior to the other, or because one style draws from several things that you're going to be, you're going to be okay against someone who's a seasoned fighter. That's not the case at all. All right, that's really important.
I think people make that mistake. Just because fighting dirty gives you an edge doesn't mean you can fight a professional fighter.
Exactly right.
Who that's their livelihood. That's all they do, day in, day out.
Yeah.
No, their skills are at a different level than yours.
That's absolutely right. I think Krav Maga schools have to stop talking about how the eye gouge or the strike to the groin is the deus ex machina of fighting. There are going to be times where if someone's putting you in a rear naked choke, you're not going to be able to hit them in the groin. You're not going to be able to gouge their eyes. I mean, you just can't. There's a solution. I mean, there's a few possible ways to avoid getting choked out, but they come from BJJ. because that's just what provides the best solution. That is not the time to be looking to gouge. I'm not saying that gouging the eyes or even biting or tearing or ripping or striking the groin, there's a time and place for that. But that's not the solution to everything that's out there. That's why it's important to cross-train. That's why it's important to look at these styles and see what they have to offer. They exist for a reason. They have amazing practitioners at the highest levels for a reason. So you say, well, it's no longer Krav Maga then. Not true. Krav Maga is what you call Krav Maga. What we call Krav Maga here, someone might look and go like, well, guys, you guys are on the ground, and other than the occasional headbutt or strike to the neck or gouging out or tearing the ear, a lot of it looks like BJJ. It's like, well, of course. You know, we have a strong background in BJJ because it makes a lot of sense to have it when you're on the ground.
I think that's another point people bring up is that, at least in some Krav Maga schools, the ground training they get is really rudimentary.
Yeah, we hear that a lot.
They just, I don't know what it is. They don't know enough, or they don't take it seriously enough, or they've got this idea in their head that they can't get out. That, well, I got to get up, I got to get to my feet, which is great. It's probably a good idea on the street, but if you don't have some skills on the ground, and they have a little bit of skills on the ground, you're in deep water. You're drowning. I think anybody who's gone to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, even for a few days, you realize the steepness of the learning curve, the difference between someone who knows nothing and someone who knows even a little bit. They can just stick you. They may not be able to finish you, but you're going to be stuck if they want you to be stuck.
That's exactly right. And if you're dealing with a multiple aggressor situation, the guy grabbing you and trying to drag you to the ground or hold you on the ground doesn't have to win. They don't have to finish you. All they have to do is hold you long enough for their accomplices to get there and do the damage for them. You see? But the more you try to yank yourself out of that with anti-grappling, you're just expending energy and making it worse on yourself.
The best anti-grappling is grappling.
Right.
You can obviously, you can add strikes in. You can make it dirty. I mean, even wrestlers get dirty when they think they can get.
Of course, absolutely. And then that brings me to another point. It's important that when you're training this stuff, don't leave a gap in your game. If you come from another system and you come from, say, a system that's heavy on kicks, I'm sure you have fantastic kicks, but don't be afraid to re-examine some of that which has worked for you in the past. I mean, we've all seen MMA matches where someone comes in, with the early MMA days, someone would come in with a kicking pedigree and then be immediately taken to the ground. There's nothing wrong with learning how to fight at other distances. And there are systems that can teach us that, okay? So don't be afraid to reassess and go, okay, you know what, my kicks might be great, but the kick that I like, I'm not really gonna use in the street. This one that I like, I can use, but only under these circumstances. And these others, well, I'm gonna have to change the way I do them because I'm not point sparring anymore. I'm fighting to actually cause damage, not to just touch and have a flag go up. You know, we have to be willing to ask those difficult questions. And then people coming from other styles that are grappling heavy have to understand that strikers have a lot to offer too. There's going to be someone who's going to outbox them, someone who has some great Muay Thai chops, or someone who did Lethway and is going to give them a tremendous headbutt. So we have to be aware of these things too. All right, we have to be aware of fighting at all distances.
Nobody has all the answers to everything.
That's exactly right, and not even those Krav Maga schools that say they do. So because we're a Krav Maga school, we have to be willing to look at what other people call Krav Maga, and what was called Krav Maga just a few years ago. So for example, the famous 360 defense. One of those techniques, it's a compendium of techniques. It's a concept, really. It's basically, I'm able to defend something and strike simultaneously. And it's very prevalent in Krav Maga schools. But again, I'm not insulting anyone. I'm putting it forward to the Krav Maga community. I'm asking you guys to ask yourselves these questions seriously. Look at what people from other systems are saying and understand their viewpoint, and understand if that really was so fantastic, this wide block with a punch, If that's so great, why don't we see it more?
Have you ever seen it in a cage?
I guess, yeah, that's a good question. Why don't we see it ever?
Anyone do that in a cage?
Right. Let's be honest. And we watch these videos of people who are trained, special forces level. I think it was a Korean special forces group that was doing knife defense, and they're doing 360 defense. It looks like I guess a little bit like patty cake. They're just doing. I mean, I don't mean to insult. It's really quick, and no doubt they have great reflexes. I'm not down that they're not physically fit. It's just that I don't know to what extent that's going to save their life against someone who has a knife in their hand. Those are just not things that would really translate to results, to real results in the street, especially if someone was wielding a weapon. All right? You have to look at that.
It's a simple thing to test that. When you see people do those drills, they're static. They're both standing in one place. Nobody is moving anything but their hands. Does that work if he starts moving around?
Exactly right.
Does that work if he moves in? Which is a common thing in a knife attack for somebody to get very close and just punch you in the stomach, the chest with that blade.
Right. And how much is that instructor asking that student to do as far as compliance? If when the instructor is demonstrating at any point in time, the student could have just withdrawn their hand and stabbed a different way, or dropped their hand and stabbed this way, or moved a certain way. If the instructor requires too much compliance from the student, it's just not going to work in real life. These techniques have to be pressure tested. Throw on some helmets, mouth guards, cups, and start going at it. Tag each other up. There are knives. There are practice knives that show that have ink on them. I think some of them have. Like shocking. Yeah, so you could do that, but ask yourself these difficult questions and quantify it. If this stuff is so great, it's got to work more often than it fails, right? And take into account, if it's failing, what's at stake? Isn't that someone's life? Isn't that your student's life? It's a human life. So instructors have to take their job very, very seriously. You're sending these students out into the world with these techniques, and if they're walking on with a false sense of security, because what you taught them simply won't hold up to the rigors of real life, then you're in dereliction of your duty as a self-defense instructor, and I would say just morally. That's a very serious thing. We had also talked a little bit about some of the other techniques that you see as far as parrying and checking, and how boxing comes into that head movement.
Yeah. I know we talked about, like, there's one of the things you see in boxing, you see in kickboxing, you see in any sport where they hit each other, you see head movement. And you don't see a lot of that in traditional martial arts. And from what I've seen, not in a lot of Krav schools. There's a complete reliance on the hands, and your head is just there in the middle the whole time. And there's a reason why there's so much head movement in boxing. There's so much head movement, man, in MMA. I mean, you could argue that there's some people who use it more in MMA because they got little gloves. And they don't even have, a boxer can use those gloves to block more effectively than you can with a little glove.
Right.
And that's not knocking them. I mean, that's part of the rule set. Of course they're going to use it as best, their best advantage. But I think that's a big question mark for me. Why is that not there? Why do people not train that?
Right. There's a reason boxing's been around for so long. How long have we had Western style boxing as a sport? It's coming up to almost 200 years or 150 years.
We know that people have boxed since ancient Egypt.
Right. So I think we've mastered ducking, right? Bobbing and weaving. We've mastered getting our head out of the way. I think humanity as a species understands that getting punched in the head is bad. All right. So chambered blocking, unfortunately, that's been tested. I think we can all agree that chambered blocking has gone the way of the dodo, as it should. I think that some of this old-fashioned 360 events has to be done away with. Now, that's not to say that the concept in and of itself, the Hebrew term for this defensive and offensive technique is technika hagana vehatkafa simultani, which is simultaneous defensive and offensive. That could be anything. That could be putting my hand up, shoulder up and covering as I elbow, putting my hand up. Or as I'm covering, taking a shot to the body. you know, that in and of itself is already defending, you know, and attacking at the same time. So that simultaneous defense and offense, it's not that it's bad. It's just how you apply it, how it's done, and what kind.
The way that principle is applied.
Exactly right.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, it doesn't.
Somebody slipping and throwing an overhand, you see that all the time.
Right. Now, and what I would say to our friends who do other systems, very valid systems, I'm sure, is don't be afraid to consult your local Krav Maga school if you feel that they have a level of authenticity and a level of pragmatism that you find that you're comfortable with. Ask about knife and gun defense. So we have been very blessed that we've had some fantastic MMA fighters come to our school here, who we consider not just training partners, but dear friends. I mean, actual current UFC fighters and then former UFC fighters who visited here. And you'll see their videos on our social media, Gleason Tebow and Mashka Agapova. They've trained here. And I'm not going to teach Gleason how to choke somebody out. I'm not going to teach.
I'm going to teach him how to do a takedown.
Yeah.
He's kind of proven that he can do that.
Was it? His record is most number or second most number
in his division, I think.
Yeah, of successful takedown attempts in the UFC.
And
so
I think he's probably the only person who shut Habib down takedown wise.
Yeah. So we teach takedowns here. We teach sprawling. We teach single leg, double leg, dumps, all that stuff. But I'm not going to teach him that because that's his bread and butter. What we did is that we put him on his knees, we put a gun to his head, we put an assault rifle to his head, we put a knife on his throat, because he has the other sides of the equation. Now he may tweak it now that he's rolling on the ground with someone with a knife, or now that he has two guys coming up on him and one of them has a stick. So he's taking what he already knows and he's just tweaking it to fit a situation. All right? And these are people who recognize that, look, I'm fantastic in the octagon, but I would be curious to know what happens if someone puts an AK-47 in my head. Okay, then we can definitely examine that. You know? So it's not that we redefined takedowns or we've improved upon certain things that are already fantastic to begin with. You know, we approach the styles that we draw from with a great deal of reverence. And just like people in the sciences, just if you're writing a scientific paper, it has to be peer reviewed. So we put our stuff out there. What do you guys think? And we make sure we have we cite the source. All right, your bibliography. So if I am showing scarf hold, look, this comes from this system or this one. This is also called kesagatame, and it comes from here. And they do it this way. This might work if they have this type of weapon. And we tell people where it's from. You know, whether it's a punch or a kick or a headbutt or a throw or a choke, we let people know this is where it came from and this is how we're using it. All right?
Yeah. Well, there's very few things that haven't been done already anyway.
That's exactly right.
I think people even find that out in grappling. They think they've come up with this new submission. They haven't seen anybody do it before. You know, as far as they know, they invented it. And then you see a video from like 50 years ago where somebody has already done it. Like some catch wrestler did it to someone. Or
that's exactly right.
Because people have been doing those things to each other for so long.
Yeah.
Someone's bound to have figured it out, you know?
So my final point is whether you're a Krav Maga school or any school, if what you're doing is you're adding a certain flair or you're adding a certain element to a technique just to add an element of stylistic distinctiveness. And this I've seen a lot in Krav Maga schools around the world. They say, well, yeah, you can take a gun this way, but our system is completely different because we add this and this. And those things were purely cosmetic. And what you're doing is taking a student's time that they can be using on how not to get their head knocked off their shoulders or how not to be slashed up in the deli meat. You're taking their time and adding this useless flourish just to make your stuff special or unique. That's a very dangerous thing. Then you
make yourself stand out.
Right. And then you repackage that as, well, Krav Maga, we're 10 times even more. We're ultra Krav Maga.
The evolution of Krav Maga.
Yeah, the evolution. Right. Exactly. That's always the case. That's always the case. There's always that. And then so be careful, because even though we live in the age of social media, there are still charlatans out there, So these are things to look out for. We hope you've enjoyed this video. We'd love to hear your comments. Just understand that a lot of it is on you. You know, at this moment right now, somebody out there with no training whatsoever, you know, through the force to stay alive, the sheer will to stay alive, is doing what they can to fend off an aggressor. I think it's incumbent upon us to learn something, some way to keep ourselves safe. And this is the way we do it. And we're thankful for the people who take it seriously and the people from all systems who are out there doing the good work because they want to empower somebody and keep people alive. And for those schools who are training for the love of sport and they're training these amazing champions who contribute so much to us as a system. Guys, thank you so much.